We finally found it! The holy grail of Paper Mario Lost Media. The E3 2010 trailer. Wow, I've been helping to lead the search for this over the past 4-ish years now, so it's crazy that we actually found it. And honestly, the trailer is even better than I was expecting it. Some people were a little disappointed by it, but personally, I was literally just expecting it to be the screenshots that we had, but animated. But it is so much more than that, which I am really happy. There is quite a lot to unpack here, as someone who's been kind of researching the Sticker Star development history over the past couple years. So this is just incredible. Like, over the past few years, we've been on so many dead-end searches and found so many leads that led to nowhere. So this just feels so relieving that we actually have a closure to this now. Like, so many of us thought that it was never gonna show up, or if it was like some kind of lost cause at some point. So this is just amazing, and the trailer itself was found in the most insane way possible, and it feels nearly impossible that this actually happened. So apparently there was someone who was selling a ROM of the trailer that was from a 3DS demo unit, and Mario Nova actually purchased it. It came up so quick and out of nowhere, which was crazy. Like, there wasn't much discussion about the trailer for a while until this happened, so it's just so crazy how fast things kind of came together. I remember everyone on the Paper Mario Beta Discord server just kind of going crazy about this like trailer, about the drop and everything. At first we didn't think it was real, but then we kept getting more evidence that it was actually like the case, and oh man, that these past 24 hours have been so fun for the Paper Mario Beta community. But let's discuss the actual trailer, since like I said, there's so much to unpack here as someone who's been interested in the Sticker Star development for a few years. So it was about 2 minutes long, which was actually a lot longer than we expected it. We only expected it to be a minute long based on the quote-unquote full audio that we had of it from Nintendo World Report. That audio was about 1 minute long. So apparently that was only kind of started, that recording was only started in the middle of the trailer. So I think it's even more exciting to know that, like, there was much more to this than we were expecting. It wasn't just like a short minute-long trailer, it's actually 2 minutes. I know that doesn't sound like that much longer, but, there was so much more footage that we weren't expecting to see, as well as, like, the music as well. But one thing that's pretty interesting is the logo. Since that was also different than we were expecting, I was mostly expecting the logo for this to be the same as E3 2011, which was basically Super Paper Mario's logo without the super part. But no, it's actually a completely different logo. It actually uses the font from, like, a lot of stuff that was in-game in Sticker Star. It is fairly similar to, like, some of the other fonts that are used in the older Paper Mario games, but I think it differs slightly, but it is pretty interesting. Like, it is much different than, like, a lot of the other Paper Mario logos. It actually kind of reminds me of the Super Mario RPG 2 logo, weirdly enough, as well as one of the early Paper Mario 64 logos. So I just think that's kind of interesting, that it kind of resembles that. And some of the things in the trailer are pretty interesting. The animations kind of have like a mixture of the Thousand Year Door style smooth animations and the choppier stop-motion animations from the final game in Sticker Star, and that combination actually kind of looks good. Though there were some animations that did look a bit unfinished, like some of the walking cycles in some areas, but that was likely because this was very early in development. This game started development in 2009, likely in the second half of 2009, so there likely was like a lot of things that weren't that polished, since this was very early in development, and there were like some placeholder things here and there. The music sounds pretty nice as well. We already heard like some of it from the original recording that we had from Nintendo World Report, but we got the full thing here and a lot of parts that we haven't heard before. And it's basically kind of like a classic Paper Mario-esque version of Blue Skies, White Clouds, and it sounds pretty good. I do love the final version of Blue Skies, White Clouds, because Sticker Star soundtrack is great, but there's something about this original version that has, like, so much charm, and it feels so lively, and just, like, Paper Mario-esque, that I just love it. Just something about it just sounds really nice. And another thing that sounds really nice are the sound effects. I love how the sound effects sound here. It kind of reminds me of, like, Paper Mario 64 a lot. It's very distinct from, like, Thousand Year Door in Super Paper Mario. Actually, there are some very, like, Thousand Year Door-esque sound effects here, but I think it's most reminiscent of 64's sound effects, I would say. A lot of things from this trailer were very reminiscent of 64, I would say. Just, like, visually and, like, aesthetically, I would say. And I can kind of see where a lot of journalists were coming from when they saw this back in 2010 on the 3DS demo system. So I can kind of see that there. And a lot of the things that showed up here were pretty interesting with the enemies. So Spiny showed up, and they used their classic design from 64, Thousand Year Door, and Super Paper Mario, kind of similar to the Goombas and Koopas. I kind of like the classic Spiny design. I know it looks a bit goofy, but I like it. They look cute. And the Paratroopa also appears as well, and uses the classic Koopa design. And they're like, they don't have the shades like Thousand Year Door in Super Paper, well, all three games, like 64, Thousand Year Door, and Super Paper Mario, but they do use the same design as the Koopa characters. So it still is like a classic design that they're using there, which is nice. And another very unexpected one that was there, I was not expecting to see this enemy here at all, but Fishbone. Like, that was one enemy in Sticker Star that was scrapped as a battle enemy, so that might have something to do with it, like, being here and, like, appearing here, because it was planned to be an enemy in Sticker Star. But the way they handled it was really interesting. It has a very different design from the overworld Fishbones in the final game. Like, the final game, they look very similar to the ones from New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and I don't really like that design because it looks weirdly too 3D and has a little too much depth to it. Doesn't really have that Paper Mario chibi vibe. But the old design from the E3 2010 trailer looks completely different. It doesn't even really look like a Fishbone that much. It kind of looks more like that one sub-variant of Fishbone from Super Mario Land 2, which looks pretty interesting. And you know, even though it doesn't look very much like a Fishbone, I kind of like this design. I think it would work well as like a variant of it, like maybe a Dry Cheep Cheep or something like that, because this has more of the proportions of a regular Cheep Cheep compared to like regular Fishbones. So I do think it looks good in its own right, but the way it kind of expands into like a bunch of clones when you jump on it is crazy. Like, that would have been a really intimidating enemy to come across, like, in the game and everything, because that is crazy. I think that was kind of done for, like, the 3D effect, but I think that could have worked in battle. Like, imagine if you could only, like, hit it in certain ways or try to, like, take it out before it, like, expands into a bunch of, like, other Fishbones. And then if, like, a bunch of them, like, pop out like that, you'd have to try to avoid their attacks, either by, like, guarding, or using something like a boost sheet, or something like that, or using an item to take all of them out at once. So that would have been really cool. I kind of, like, I think it's cool how there are some, like, enemies that can kind of, like, either, like, make a bunch of clones, or make, like, a bunch, I wonder, it could have been, like, the wizard in Thousand Year Door, too, that makes, like, a bunch of clones that are fake, and you have to try to guess which one it is. I'm not sure if it would have been like that, because there's like a bunch of them in all different directions, not just on the plane of battle. So I'm not sure how that would have worked, but it is a really cool enemy regardless, and I think it looks pretty cool. And then, of course, we got another glimpse of King Monty Mole, which was one of the actual characters that was scrapped, and it throws the boulder, like, from the screenshot, which does 5 damage, which is kind of interesting. It was seemingly early in the. It seems like it was an area early in the game too, so that would be kind of crazy if that's like actually 5 damage there. But we also got a look at Mario jumping on it, seemingly using like a power bounce like sticker, or like hop slipper if that existed at this point. But you could see that it actually reveals that the top of his crown is actually a mushroom, which we did not know anything about before based on previous screenshots and things. So that was really interesting. Like, maybe it was controlled by something, like maybe the mushroom is like some kind of like parasite, or like something like controlling it. That would actually be really interesting. It's almost kind of like a slight horror element to it. Kind of like Origami King in Color Splash, and even a little bit of Super Paper Mario tap into a little bit. So it would have been cool to see that here. Maybe it has something to do with the Mander enemies that were scrapped from the game. We didn't see any of those in the trailer, but they could have still been planned at this point in development, and that could have tied into the story with that mushroom and everything. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about. King Monty Mole was already one of the most popular characters from this like build of the game. So it's cool getting like another angle on this character, like more information about him. And then one weird thing that actually didn't show up in this trailer were Pokies. We got a screenshot of Pokies in like some of the screenshots that were in the press release, but we weirdly didn't see any in the trailer. There were actually a few things that differed between the screenshots in the trailer. I already pointed something out well before this trailer was actually found, but in the fortress where the Womp is, it actually has like stones on the ground that don't appear in the press release screenshot. So the footage in the trailer is actually a little different than the build that was in the screenshot, or at the very least, they were showcasing different areas. So that's an interesting thing to think about. And another thing that was very notable about this that we've been thinking about for quite a while in terms of like E3 2010 is the Chain Chomp partner. And wow, the Chain Chomp partner is really cool. Sure, it has a generic design, but I don't really mind. Like, I still think it looks pretty cool, and this was very early in development, so they could have had plans for like a more interesting Chain Chomp partner, like later down the line, if they were going to continue to go in this direction. The generic design really just seems like a placeholder for like a more interesting Chain Chomp design, because at this point we do know that they were definitely planning unique characters like the King Monty Mole and Manders and different things like that. So it was likely just a placeholder that it was like that. This was basically just the foundation of whatever Chain Chomp partner they were thinking of. But it's really expressive. I really like how expressive the Chain Chomp is in battle. It almost kind of like dances around, similar to like in the Mario and Luigi series, how like Mario and Luigi kind of like dance around when they're idle in battle. It kind of reminds me of that, but the Chain Chomp's attack is also really cool as well. It kind of has an attack similar to Power Shell that Kooper and Koops had in 64 and 1000 Year Door respectively. But it seems like it attacks the enemies in a certain, like in an interesting way. It kind of like attacks, it's all in one attack, but it kind of does one enemy at once, not like one sweeping attack. So I wonder if the action command was kind of similar to like something like Mini Egg, where you have to like time them correctly. Like you have to do like 3 different like button presses correctly to hit all of the enemies. I think that's probably what it was. Or it might have been a thing where you press A at each of the enemy. I think like the way it looks a bit too fast to press A when you're actually hitting the enemies. It looks like it might have been something like Mini Egg to charge it up. And when I'm referring to Mini Egg, I mean the one move that Yoshi had in 1000 Year Door. But yeah. And another thing that looked really cool were the environments. We already knew that the environments looked really nice based on the screenshots and very tiny bits of footage that we had before. But man, seeing it in action looks way better than I was expecting. The card maze looks amazing. I love how like whoever was playing the game for the trailer just stopped at like one of the cards and just peeked Mario's head through and just jumped over it. That was kind of cute. Like they're kind of acknowledging that like This is just like a really cool and cute area here. Ah, I'm so disappointed that the card maze was scrapped. That's such a cool area. But we also saw that the question blocks are actually animated, which is pretty cool. They actually kind of like move horizontally, which is really cool. And the fortress is also interesting as well. It has like two different colors. Like there's one part that's like kind of gray where the womps are. And then there's another one that's kind of bluish in hue. We kind of noticed that before, like from like various like bits of footage and screenshots and things. But since we saw both colors in like the actual trailer, I think there were like two different parts of the fortress. That's kind of what I'm predicting here. But then there are some like other areas too. There's like one area that kind of that has like the new Super Mario Bros. Hills, but it actually looks really nice. That is how you handle the new Super Mario Bros. Aesthetic in Paper Mario. Like, not making just like a cardboard version of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, like how the final game does, but just mixing the little elements of New Super Mario Bros. In with Paper Mario's own charm and personality. It actually looks really nice. It kind of looks like a mixture of like Pushmo, Paper Mario 64, Thousand Year Door, a little bit of New Super Mario Bros. Wii. And even though this game came after, it even resembles Dream Team a little bit. Like, it's like the Paper Mario equivalent of Dream Team, I would say. Where Dream Team's style was, like, definitely faithful to the previous Mario and Luigi games, but kind of had its own spin on it. That's the vibe that I'm getting here. This kind of looks like the Dream Team of Paper Mario, which would have been amazing. So it's really unfortunate that they scrapped that style in favor of, like, cardboard New Super Mario Bros. Wii. So, yeah. And also, going back to the fortress, there's a cool room where it shows a switch that basically kind of, like, reveals the background. The switch looks like it was ripped directly out of Paper Mario 64, which is pretty interesting. Though I think it probably was a remade asset. I don't think it's the exact same asset since it's a little higher resolution than Paper Mario 64. But it has the same design as Paper Mario 64, but it basically kind of stretches out and expands the background, which would look really cool in 3D. I'm gonna have to try to load this on the 3DS so I could view this in 3D if that's possible, because that would look amazing. But that's a really cool little visual element there. And then it also showed, like, the paperization as well, kind of like an early version of it, where it just showed, like, a little scrap of, like, a log bridge, which looks really cool. And honestly, the way they're handling paperization here, it looks more like a thing that kind of seamlessly works in with, like, the overworld, not something that kind of, like, obstructs the gameplay. It kind of seems like it's handled more like Thousand Year Doors, like, overworld abilities, where it's just kind of, like, baked into it, like, oh, you see a gap? Place a scrap there. It kind of seems more intuitive than Sticker Star's system of paperization, just from the impression that I'm getting from this. And there's also a really cool paper area, or a cave, not paper, but cave area, which looks really cool. It's like it's like purplish, and man, it looks really nice. Like that, we didn't get any glimpse or anything, no screenshots at all of this area, and it just looks really cool. You could even see, like, in the background, you could see, like, mountains, kind of through, like, the little gaps that you see. So that just looks incredible. I do see, like, some inspiration that the final version of Sticker Star took from, like, some of these areas, but man, they just stripped back so much of the charm in the final version of the game. Like, this just looks so good, like the pastel-esque colors, like all of these like lively Paper Mario 64-esque environments. They just look really good, and it's just so sad that they scrapped this. And the battle is pretty interesting as well. Like, Mario's base attack power seems to be 2, so it seemed to be a tiny bit inflated compared to like Thousand Year Door. But I think that was already kind of to be expected based on, like, screenshots and things. And I already mentioned the Chain Chomp as well. And then we could also see that there was some form of stickers. And at first, they kind of do seem to work like they do in the final game. But honestly, I think they probably would have worked a little differently at this point. considering how Tanabe mentioned that stickers weren't fully implemented in battles akin to the final game until after E3 2010, so I feel like this was more so like a 3D visual effect that kind of used the sticker effect that was used in the final game. I think my theory for this is either that it was some kind of upgrade, or badge-like equivalent, kind of similar to like Mario and Luigi Paper Jam's card system, as well as like kind of like a very interesting different take on badges. Though they could have done like some sort of sticker thing where they could have like it could have been a thing where you had the regular attacks available to you, which is why like the hammer had like a blue background on it. That could have been why it was like that there. But then you could apply the stickers that kind of make your attack stronger. That's another idea that I have for it as well. I just think it would have been a little different than it was in the final game, just due to the Iwata Asks interview. It kind of implies that it was a little different in this build. And there was also planned to be some other interesting things that weren't directly shown in this trailer. Like, EXP was found in the files, so at this point in development, they probably were considering adding EXP, which would have significantly improved the battle system in this game, as well as things like the S-meter, which could have been tied to something like special moves, and that was seen in slightly later builds of the game. So that could have been implemented here, but just not shown in any of the footage. So I do think battles were a little more interesting than they were in the final game. And another thing to keep in mind is that this is very early in development, so I've just been pretty excited about this because my expectations were kind of in check with this. I kind of knew that this was early footage and that some of the areas were kind of empty. I think that is to be expected for a game that has been in development for less than a year. You really can't expect things to be as fully fleshed out as like a full game. So I think that's kind of understandable there for that part. I was kind of expecting it to be like that. But still, from what we've seen, this is still absolutely incredible. And I still think this is much better than the game that we actually got. I think this would have been a really cool little Paper Mario game on the 3DS. I don't think it would have been as fully fleshed out as something like Thousand Year Door, but honestly, in the direction that they were going, this would have been at least as fun or interesting or creative as Paper Mario 64, I'd say. Just from like what we've seen, if they had another like 2.5 years for this to bake and make into a final game, I think like the fact that this was before like all the Miyamoto things with Tanabe and everything, if they went in this direction, I'm definitely confident that this would have been a fairly good Paper Mario game from what we've seen. So it definitely is very sad that they kind of stripped away most of this identity in favor for something much worse and much more generic. But yeah, it's just absolutely incredible that this was actually found. This was one of my most wanted pieces of lost media ever. And this is something that I wanted just as much as the Thousand Year Door remake happening. This year has been so incredible for Paper Mario fans. Like, so many amazing things have been happening, as well as Mario RPG fans as a whole, when we consider Brothership happening and the Mario RPG remake. Man, we are eating good. But yeah, anyways, I definitely have a lot of content on this planned in the future, because I've been spending quite a lot of time searching for this trailer. So I have a lot to say, a lot more to say than just what I've said in this video. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Goodbye.